Hey everyone, my name's Seth. I'm Darren's firstborn, if you didn't know that. I'd like to share a little bit of my story and how I've experienced the reality of Romans 8:28, that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him. My story starts with running, like all tragic tales of woe. I had this genius idea to join the cross-country team at my new high school in the name of social connections and physical fitness. Kids, don't make the mistake I did. There's no good reason to sprint unless a clown is chasing you. Anyway, I was a terrible runner to start, but as the season dragged on, I started having frequent bouts of diarrhea. That didn't improve my running skills, but it did fill me with an ever-present fear of soiling my pants. It worsened and worsened over the next couple weeks, and eventually I started bleeding a lot whenever I used the toilet. When I told my parents about that, we jumped in the Andervan and drove to the pediatrician. He sent me to a GI specialist named Dr. Guna, who suspected a disease called ulcerative colitis. I had my first colonoscopy of many to confirm that diagnosis. Sure enough, that wonderful experience typically reserved for 7-year-olds showed that my teenage body was slowly self-destructing. Treatment started with a steroid pill called prednisone. Prednisone is commonly used to stop inflammation when people are afflicted with poison ivy or another skin irritation. The only thing prednisone changed for me was my face. It puffed up like Theodore the Chipmunk within a couple of weeks and broke out in horrendous pustulant acne a little while after that. Think of a topographical map of the Rockies and you get the general picture. So that was fantastic. And it wasn't slowing or stopping the colitis at all. So I started taking methylprednisolone, prednisone's bigger, nastier brother. My symptoms finally started to improve, but at a very severe cost. My body started ripping itself apart with stretch marks that looked like someone had slashed a knife across my legs and back. My tongue turned white and I couldn't really taste anything. But the most vicious side effects were psychological. I started feeling agitated, like someone was watching me when no one was around. That irrational paranoia evolved into fear that something or someone was waiting to kill me. I completely lost my social filter, so I would randomly snap, clap, and click my tongue in public. My memory is a little fuzzy around this time, but my good friends up north have reminded me of some of the more memorable outbursts of my alter ego they lovingly dubbed Psycho Seth. The mental problems were terrifying because I knew that the medicine was responsible for screwing up my brain. But I had to keep taking it in order to control the bleeding. Eventually my mind got so sick that I started hallucinating. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and the whole ceiling of my room would be moving as if it was covered with thousands of glistening, malevolent spiders. This was without a doubt the darkest, most terrifying, and crushingly real time of my life. I knew I was a Christian, but it felt like God was punishing me. There didn't seem to be a reason for my suffering, and there were plenty of times when I thought suicide would be an easier route to take than the seemingly endless path of pain from disease and psychosis. This was the first time that I related to David's cries of desperation, as in Psalm 13. How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. After several months of increasingly difficult physical and psychological problems where I had to stay home from school, struggling with my mom and a tutor to finish my sophomore year, Dr. Guna finally recommended surgery. This summer will be the 2-year anniversary of when a colorectal surgeon removed my entire large intestine. The biology books call it your colon, and it turns out it's fairly important. When I woke up from surgery, I had an ostomy bag applied to my torso. Basically, my small intestine was hanging out of my abdomen, constantly expelling waste, and I had no way to control it, so I had to have a bag stuck to me to catch the feces, and I had to empty it every few hours. It was a disgusting and humiliating task, but I was able to get off the methylprednisolone, so my mind and body slowly returned to normal, which was an enormous blessing in answer to prayer. I was also able to return to school, which was a blessing and a curse. It was embarrassing to be the junior that everyone had forgotten existed during my 6-month leave of absence. 11th grade is tough enough without the social awkwardness of rebuilding relationships and the physical difficulty of dealing with an ostomy. My family, friends, and teachers were all very supportive and encouraging, and I can't thank them enough for that. My faith, however, really suffered during that season of drought and struggle. While I was desperate and longed for God while my mind and body were in shambles, I didn't feel like a relationship with Him was much of a priority once I started recovering. I resented God for allowing my disease and suffering, and I blamed Him for the opportunities that I'd lost because of the illness and surgery. I felt like I couldn't forgive God for what He had put me through. I had my second surgery in November of 2016, in which the surgeon took the last few feet of my small intestine and wrapped it around itself, to build what they call a J-pouch. This pouch, they told me, would learn to absorb water and function as a colon-esque reservoir over time. The tissue needed a few months to adjust to its new position before I could use it, so I continued with my ostomy bag until the final surgery in February of last year. The surgeon ultimately shoved my ostomy back inside my gut and attached my recovering J-pouch to the normal human waste disposal zone. The doctor and nurses assured me that I would be back to functioning like a normal teenager after a couple of months, so I was genuinely excited and optimistic for literally the first time in years. Unfortunately, my immune system decided that it would be fun to attack my J-pouch for a while, just like old times, so I was still dashing to the bathroom a dozen times a day for the better part of last year. Towards the end of the summer, my dad received a call from this church in Tampa called Oakwood, and we made plans to relocate to the promised land of Florida. I was happy about this great new opportunity, but I also felt a degree of regret and loss when we moved. I'd made some of the best friends I've ever had in Chicago, and they were with me through the hardest years of my life. I was angry with God for taking away the stable and secure life that would have been mine had I graduated in Illinois, gone to a school in the Midwest with my friends, and lived my life without much more drama or sacrifice. That wasn't God's plan, though, and we moved down at the end of August. For my first several weeks and months here, I continued to struggle with dominating feelings of injustice, depression, and outrage towards God. I tried to isolate myself from Him, going through the motions of church without desiring a relationship with my Savior. And it took me a long time and plenty of sleepless nights to finally reach a point of surrender and renewed commitment to following Christ. I wish I had let God work in me and change me sooner, but the truth of Romans 8 is that His timing and plan are perfect, even when we are slow to trust Him and slow to respond to His Spirit. His plan for our lives is good, and His purpose for our lives is growth. Looking back, I can definitely see how God was changing me and those around me for the better. Frankly, I used to be an egotistical jerk and felt like I was superior to my peers and family. I doubt the person I am today would be friends with the person I was before UC. It's really kind of sad that a chronic disease, hallucinations, surgery, and a long recovery period were necessary to alter my stubborn, bitter heart. Now, however, I can honestly say along with Paul that all things work together for good, for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. God used ulcerative colitis, methylprednisolone, an ileostomy, a cross-country move, and tons of hormonal teenage emotion to make me more like Jesus. It was painful, obviously, but I see now that it was purposeful. I've learned to truly place my trust in my Creator, and I'm still growing as a person and as a follower of Christ. I hope my story encourages you to place even more faith in God's purposes and plans for your life, even if right now you are walking through the valley of the shadow of death.